Hello and welcome to this meeting of the Council of the Town of Oakville. And we are having this meeting as we come to the end of Islamic Heritage Month. I guess it was about 6 years ago that the country declared October Islamic Heritage Month, and it was just a couple of weeks shy of 4 years ago that the province of Ontario did too. It provides us with an opportunity to reflect on the contributions that Muslims have been making for generations to our country and our province and its prosperity and success. I now invite everybody to rise and join Council in O Canada. Thank you, everybody. Madam Clerk, do we have any regrets for this evening? It looks to me like we have a full house.
We have no regrets.
No regrets. Let's not make an occasion for any. Council, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Madam Clerk, I see none. Council, if two of you would move and second the confirmation of the minutes of the previous meetings, I'd be grateful. Councillor Sanju and Councillor Duddick, thank you. This is moved that the minutes of the special session of Council dated September 14th, 2020 be approved. That the minutes of the regular session of Council and the closed session of Council dated September 21st be approved. And that the minutes of the planning and development session and the closed session of Council dated October 8th be approved. Any objection? Madam Clerk, there's no objection. The motion carries. The minutes are approved. Council, we've received a request from staff to withdraw confidential consent item C1, and I would ask for a mover and seconder to permit that to be withdrawn. Councillor Robertson and Councillor Grant, thank you. Any objection to the withdrawal? Madam Clerk, the motion is carried and the item is withdrawn. Council, you have consent items 1, 2, 3, and 4. The Council and Committee meeting schedule, the crossing agreement with Imperial Oil, the traffic bylaw amendment, and the parking garage at 325 Reynolds Street item. How do you wish to proceed with the consent? Councillor Haslett-Thiel.
I'd like to separate out number 3 and 4 if possible.
All right. Will you move them all, though?
Sure.
All right. And Councillor Giddings, are you seconding them all? Please and thank you very much. Is there any objection to consent items 1 and 2? Madam Clerk, those are adopted. Councillor Haslett-Thiel, you have the Zoom for item number 3 and item number 4.
So it's just a question for staff. So thank you for the report. There's ongoing questions about, how do I get a 4-way stop? When are we going to get more speed surveys? Some additional, heavy requests on the traffic engineering side. So while I'm pleased to move this, is there an opportunity for you to just clarify for us when we will see some additional changes as a result of some of these fall speed surveys, as well as an update on the photo radar administrative report?
Thank you, Councillor. Director Stevens is making her way to the podium. Welcome, Director.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, we are well underway with our fall speed survey program and our traffic counts program to allow us to do the counts and the assessments of the always stop requests that we have had. So as we complete each of those surveys, we are reviewing the results and then responding back to the councillors and or the residents who have requested that information. So that update will be provided whether the speed survey shows that traffic calming is warranted or whether the traffic count shows that an always stop is warranted, to let residents and members of council know the results and what next steps would be. To the question about automated speed enforcement, we do have a report planned as part of the budget process, which will provide an update on automated speed enforcement and traffic calming, and proposed work plans for moving that forward, as well as the budget implications of the same.
Thanks very much.
On number 3? Well, if you can't hear me, I'm
I
perturbed.
couldn't hear you the first time. Sorry, Your Worship, but I have some questions on item 4.
Oh, we're about to go to item 4. What a good coincidence. So Councillor Hasathiel and then Councillor Chisholm.
Thank you.
Thank you. So my only question is, the recommendation doesn't reference the phrase temporary parking arrangements. And it's important to those that will eventually be able to use this beautiful new community center, that there be enough parking spaces, particularly because we have a component of our community that doesn't have access really to viable transit to get there. And so I'm just wondering if the way it's phrased could include that the approval is to set up temporary arrangements during COVID.
I think that's a good question for the CAO. Madam CAO, there's a bit of a history here in terms of our relationship with Wyndham. Can you respond to the councillor, please?
Certainly, and I'm assuming that it is in recommendation 1 that you'd be looking at a temporary, or is it recommendation number 2?
No, I fully understand the Wyndham commitment that we made,
Yes.
and as do I think the community, but there are others that may, and I appreciate that we're going to stagger as well the way the parking fees could be, but there's a indication that we might use spaces for offer spaces to others, and I just want to make sure that what we're agreeing to is something that's temporary in nature, so that as the use of the community center can occur and grows, we're not locked into losing those spaces.
Yes, I think that would be quite appropriate in recommendation number 2. If there was a permanent relationship that we would have within the parking garage, we would be reporting to council in any event, and I'm thinking predominantly of the seniors component. If we were to use a portion of the garage, you would be dealing with the overall package. So it's quite appropriate that the second recommendation could refer to temporary.
Okay. So at the appropriate time, Mayor Burton, if we could just add that in, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor. Madam CAO, I understood that we had exit provisions from the agreement in any event. Is that not true?
For the Wyndham Manor portion of it, I do not believe we do. I thought it was a permanent relationship, and if Ryan Maynard is on, he could confirm that for me.
I was referring to the other bit, but
The, which other bit?
in item 2.
In item 2, what we're looking at in that case are some temporary arrangements with some uses in the area, given the COVID, and they would be temporary arrangements to be made.
So, Councillor, as I understood it when I read it, and as the CAO has explained, item 2 is meant to be temporary.
I understood that as well, but I didn't see those, the words temporary or short-term. And I just wanted to make sure what we were agreeing to, it was clear.
All right. Well, I think we're clear, are we?
Yes, and if it would bring some clarity to it, you could add the words temporary arrangements in there, really in the first paragraph. Be authorized to enter into temporary agreements, renewals, and
Okay.
amendments in the second recommendation, if that would bring some clarity.
All right. Then we will have an amendment and it will be added. Councillor Giddings, you'll be next after Councillor Chisholm. He was next after Councillor Haslett-Thiel.
I'm good, thank you.
So Councillor Chisholm.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just for clarification, how many parking stalls are in the parking garage itself in total?
So I understand there's just under 500, and yes, just under 500 spaces in the parking garage.
Okay, and right now Wyndham has 77 temporary ones. Would that is a transfer of 77 to the parking garage in a 50-year agreement?
As I understand, we have an obligation to provide parking to Wyndham Manor, which we're proposing to provide within the parking garage of the 77 spaces.
Would those parking spaces be segmented off with the regular public parking?
I would ask again if Ryan Maynard could maybe come on to the screen to
Thank you.
respond to those details.
Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the spots for Wyndham Manor are going to be on the third floor, so they will be separate from the visitor spots.
Good. Thank you. That answers my question. I was concerned if the parking spaces were on the first floor or scattered throughout, and how we would monitor that or enforce that. Anyways, that resolves my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Giddings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In the details on the report, short-term is mentioned. So if we could just understood that would be in the recommendation as well. The concern is we don't know when people will be able to return or start going to the community center in great numbers. And we just don't want to see residents frustrated from not being able to park as a result of a short-term lease with somebody nearby.
Thank you, Councillor. So, Council, let's see if Councillor Haslett-Thiel and Councillor Giddings would like to move in second, adding the word temporary before the word agreements in the first line of item number 2, paragraph number 2 of this motion. All right, thank you. Is there any objection to that amendment? Madam Clerk, there is no objection to that amendment. It's moved by Councillor Haslett-Thiel, and I can't remember anymore who seconded it. It was so long. And Councillor Giddings. For item number 3 and item number 4, is there any objection to adopting those now? Madam Clerk, there is no objection, and consent items 3 and 4 are also adopted. All right, Council, that brings us to our discussion items 5, 6, 7, and 8. And the first item is the COVID-19 update, the verbal update from the CAO. Madam CAO, you have the Zoom.
Mayor and members of council, there is a presentation that is coming up. Perhaps I'll begin as they're bringing the presentation up. It's been 209 days since the town has declared an emergency. That was on March 24th, and the province, of course, declared an emergency on March 17th. While they rescinded the declaration of the emergency in the end of July, many of the orders that they've actually put in place still retain or are in place to this day. They're extended in 30-day intervals, And the orders that are currently in place are expected to, or need a renewal on October the 22nd. Our expectation is all those orders will again be renewed for a 30-day period of time. So we've hit 40 million cases globally, over 200,000 actually in Canada. And you can see the rest of the cases on the screen with 704 new cases as of yesterday. We've had a little bit of a reprieve the last couple of days where cases have been slightly lower than they were earlier in October. This chart here certainly depicts the second wave and how it has occurred. It's much higher limits than we've had in the first wave of the pandemic. The province certainly has had a difficult time. If I could just clarify on the slide, the red line is the 7-day average. The dashed line is the peaks and valleys on a daily count. Excuse me. The province has certainly been trying to balance the safety of residents and businesses against keeping the economy open. And so they've moved to a regional approach in terms of limited shutdowns. And as you know, they have taken action on the hotspots within Ontario. So their action plan has remained the same. We have moved, Halton Region is in stage 3 of the restart program. But as you know, Peel, Toronto, Ottawa, and most recently York were moved back into a modified stage 2 program where they will stay for the next 28 days. While the province did not identify Halton as moving back, we certainly are monitoring it to see what happens with our status in the future. The Regional Medical Officer of Health has actually issued a letter to residents today encouraging them, and it's a recommendation that we temporarily pause all of our indoor group exercise programs and our indoor team sports play. So the town, in essence, put those pieces in place as of Friday. The town programs were canceled over the weekend. Some of the game play was allowed to continue with the cancellation today, but it gave them the opportunity to put those pieces in place. In addition, the Medical Officer of Health is also suggesting that, or recommending actually, that people limit their contact to just their households itself, that they really limit their activities to essential activities, and that even when they dine in restaurants, they dine with their own households and not with other households. So in terms of our specific recreation programs, I did want to outline what we still offer. We are offering fitness centers for pre-booked individuals so that they can participate in their workout sessions. Indoor sports training, only the training portion, not the game portion, pre-booked swimming and lessons, recreational skates, and registered non-fitness activities such as our cultural programs. So those things are still being offered. In addition, completely separate from the activities here in Oakville, the federal government has also extended the restrictions for border crossing between Canada and the US, and that extension is in place until November 21st. So in terms of all the health messaging that we've been hearing for the last several months now is the same. Wash our hands frequently, maintain our social distancing, wear our masks, especially where we can't maintain that social distancing. The one message that has changed is that social circles have been paused. So they're really recommending that people stay within a close contact of those within your own household and not extend beyond that. The only exception they make is where you may have a single person in a household, they may join with others. So that certainly gives some relief for some of our older family members. So Halloween is right around the corner. They are making at the provincial level some recommendations on that you could continue with the door-to-door trick-or-treating, but not within the areas that have moved to the modified stage 2. And in fact, the medical officer of health within Halton is asking you to really consider what other kinds of alternatives you want to do for Halloween. There's lots of options they have on their website, put a fair amount of detail about what it is you could do as some alternatives. And we're certainly sharing that information on all our media channels. So from an economic perspective, there's been an awful lot of funding recently announced for particularly small businesses. There was about $300 million that was advanced forward for small businesses who have fixed costs, such as their property tax, hydro, those types of things. So the details of that program is actually still rolling out. Ontario has also announced about $60 million funding under the Main Street Recovery Program, and that will deal with the costs of PPE for smaller businesses. It really is those smaller businesses of about 2 to 9 employees. The federal government has also come out with the rent subsidy program. It is a welcome relief from the previous one. In the previous one, they had not allowed tenants to take advantage of it. They do now, and that's why you saw withdrawal of the other item on the agenda itself, because taking advantage of that program is much more advantageous than the process that we were offering there. Winter patios, we have been consulting with the BIAs on winter patios, surveying them to see what they're interested in moving forward with. We do expect to be producing some guidelines this week in terms of what could carry on for the balance of this year. And then we'll be taking a report also forward to Planning and Development Council next week, recommending what we could do in 2021. The last piece is the online businesses. So we have, the town itself has 2 programs. One is the Ritual One, which is a program to assist restaurants or grocers in online ordering, and this carries on until the end of October. The second program is the Digital Main Street, which I know you've seen certainly from our Economic Development Department reported on before. It's been quite a successful program. There was an increased funding for it, and so there was a 3rd digital service team that were added. We now have contacted over 100 businesses in terms of assisting them moving to more of an online product. So it has been actually very successful, and Oakville has been one of the outstanding users, I'll say, of that program, so we've taken full advantage of it. I wanted to give you some indication of the participation rates that we've had within our own services. So in recreation, and these numbers would have been passed, not reflecting the changes we've most recently made. But there's about less than 30% of take-up on our programs when you compare to last year, which is understandable, but it gives you an idea of the magnitude. On libraries, there's about 55% less foot traffic, and our transit ridership is down about 30%. We had hoped that by the end of the year we could get up to around 50% for our transit ridership, but with the rise in the numbers of late, we're not as confident in that prediction for the end of the year. In terms of staff, we of course had the playbook that we have put in place, which outlines all our procedures for staff and how we're providing safety for them within all of our buildings, vehicles, however we can. We've re-looked at that. We're constantly updating the playbook, but in particular, we now have a screening tool in place when anyone and staff enter any of the buildings. Screening is a mandatory requirement now of the province, so we have a tool in place to help us do that. We also are reinforcing all the health protocols with them. We have been reviewing the staff levels within all of our departments to ensure we can maintain safe distancing. Move to remote working where feasible. Of course, mandatory masks are mandatory, as you know. They are not only mandatory within public areas, they are in our workspaces as well now, and in the vehicles that our staff occupy. So we have taken a renewed look at all of our practices to ensure that our staff remain safe. And we have also looked back at all of the way in which we pulled back our programs in the first wave and are looking at ways that we could pull them back easier through this wave. We're not, as the province is pulling back only in the hotspots or specific areas, we're taking the same approach. So to give you some examples of the actions that we're taking, we're looking at how we could redeploy within our winter control area or other essential services if indeed we are impacted by a shortage in our own staff. We're looking at recreation and culture to see how those protocols worked and how they can be put in place if indeed we need to pull back. We are looking at a winter recreation program with the difficulties with indoor recreational uses. We are seeing what are the other options for recreation outdoors, so we'll be reporting on that in order to move that forward. And on our building permits, we are looking at increasing the digital access. We have a new format to be bringing in early in the year, which will make it much easier for us to not only accept applications, but review applications digitally. And municipal enforcement has been an absolutely essential service throughout the whole pandemic. We are looking at how we can supplement that workforce by hiring about 8 new positions for a 1-year contract in order to ensure we can meet our obligations. We expect to have that in place in December. So while we have in place almost all of our town services, we have lots of options to continue those, even through potential staff shortages. We are a little concerned that as staff shortages may be impacted through the pandemic, we're going to have to look at our level of services and the services we provide to still ensure that we can meet all those obligations going forward. So that ends my update, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Madam CAO. Questions? Councillor Chisholm. Oh, there's quite a list. We'll just start with Councillor Chisholm.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you for the report, Jane. Very thorough. Couple of quick comments, and you made the comment right at the end of your presentation with respect to level of service. This might be a minor point, but I don't know about you, but a lot of our residents still think we have the same high level of service provided even through the COVID. The issue is going to be coming up will be leaf pickup for sure. So if we can mitigate that in some way, shape, or form, or be prepared for that, because that will be an issue of the day in my ward specifically, Kathy, in my ward. The other thing I just want to clarify too for the audience is that the border's not closed entirely. The road is closed, but there's flights coming in and out of Toronto all the time. So the border's not closed in its entirety. So I just wanted to make sure we're clear on that, and that our audience understands that our border's not totally closed 100%. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chisholm. Councillor Sandu.
Thank you, Mayor Burton. Thank you, CA Closey. I just have a couple of questions. Do we have any type of indication at all from REC or the rest of staff about when playgrounds will potentially be closed or roped off like they were back in March?
No, at this point in time, we have no indication. And I think that the science out there in terms of what COVID is and how long it stays as a contagious thing on hard surfaces is certainly growing. So whether or not they'll even move to that, I'm not so sure that they would. But we, at this point in time, have no indication from the federal or provincial government of where they may go on playgrounds.
Thank you for that. And I think that you mentioned Halloween generally, and I think we heard from the Premier either today or yesterday about how they were going to be locking down Halloween in those hotspots. Do you think that has staff kind of turned their mind to the potential expectation that those folks that might be locked down could bleed into other areas?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Could we have kids coming to Oakville or surrounding areas that are from the lockdown areas trick-or-treating?
Oh, we could potentially have that, and I don't see any way that we can really prohibit that from happening. I think the website that the Halton has, which shows different ways of celebrating, may be something that you would want to refer to if you're opening your doors or want to somehow celebrate Halloween in your own homes. It doesn't mean that you have to give out candy, so that you have to have people close up to your door. You can do it in a whole bunch of different ways. So maybe that may be something that the community should refer to.
Thank you for that, CEO Pelosi. I just wanted to ensure that staff was kind of turning their minds to it, and it sounds like you have been. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Sanju. Councillor Giddings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. CAO Pelosi, you talked briefly about the winter recreation program. Is that, it sounds very exciting. Is that programming for outdoor activities, or could you elaborate a little on that?
Sure, it is looking at what we can do to increase the amount of activities outdoors. That's going to be the best way to enjoy recreation programs. So recreation and culture staff are busy looking at all the options that we could introduce. So there's, I know, a wide range, and they're quite excited about the program that they want to develop for the winter season. But it's still in the developing stages, and we'll be rolling out with something on that a little bit later.
Very excited to hear that, and I take it that outdoor rinks will be encouraged again this year?
That may very well be one of the elements.
Councillor Giddings.
Excellent.
Councillor Giddings, will you be accepting volunteers to help you with those middle-of-the-night floods?
I've always been willing to accept volunteers, Mr. Mayor, but no one can ever find the parks I'm at. I don't know why. You mentioned in some of your earlier slides the level of participants, and it looks like we're running at about 30% compared to the same time last year. Could you just take us a little more through the staffing details? What's being done? Like how many? Are we still fully staffed, or are some taking leave? Are they been moved to other areas?
No, we are fully staffed. We have, well, I would say there is still some redeployments in place. The one center that is closed is the Performing Arts Center, and so those staff have been redeployed. I think as our treasurer has said in each one of the presentation, we have a number of gapped positions throughout the town. So we're leaving those positions gapped, and that gives us some flexibility. So the programs are all in place at this point in time. We are also looking at some virtual programming to complement what services that people are not coming in at. But even if you're down in less programs, you still need the same number of staff there to be available for those participants that are coming in the door.
All right, so as hopefully we get good news if we have a prolonged period similar to what we're going through now, or if it worsens, I take it we'll be having another look at that.
Yes, we'll certainly have to look at that depending how things go in the future. At this point in time, we're staying the course, but let's see what the future holds for all of us.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Councillor Giddings. Anyone else? Councillor Adams, Councillor Lischin.
Thank you very much. I wonder if you could just provide a financial update with respect to the impacts of the pandemic.
Oh, I wasn't prepared for that, Councillor Adams. I know that we've certainly our revenues have been impacted significantly. We've been reviewing that on an ongoing basis. In 2021, we will be in a deficit position, certainly on revenues. I believe that our treasurer had given an update at the last meeting in terms of where we stood at this point in time. I think we're about at least $4 or $5 million down in total in terms of what we will be by the end of the year. And that there is some federal and provincial resources that we can put to that, but we're still sorting through that, and we'll be reporting to you later on in the year. Certainly as part of the 2021 budget, we can give you an update in terms of 2020.
I'm certain that'll happen. The only other question I have for you is with respect to the declared emergency, can you tell me whether other municipalities have closed off their own municipal emergencies or not, or what proportion of them have?
No, I can't give you I'd have to look around at the other municipalities. As I understood, though, most of them had left their emergency in place. Some of the orders actually require that you have an emergency in place in order to take advantage of the order. The one I can think of is the redeployment order. I think you need to have a state of emergency in place in order to be able to take advantage of it. So as I understood, most were keeping it in place, but I can update you on that through perhaps an email I'll send out.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that clarification.
Councillor Liz Chenna.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for the report, Jane. So just going back to the transit ridership, you mentioned it's about 30% of the 2019, and we were hoping to the 50. What percentage actually did we calculate to be a safe way to get people back on with respect to the physical distancing? Is it 75% of the load? Do we actually have that number?
So as I understand on the transit, we're not able to maintain safe distancing. That's why it's a requirement. It has been a requirement for quite some time to wear a mask on the
Right.
buses. So we're not maintaining the safe distancing given the capacity that we expect on a lot of our trips.
So we used to have the chairs removed or put X's on those. Those have been removed as well?
I don't think that has been removed, but even in those cases, it didn't maintain the safe distancing, and I'm just going to look at Colleen Bell. That. They're back in place. Yeah. So the tape is back in place. No, tape is not. It's not in place, I'm sorry. The
So it's
tape
not
is
in place.
not in place.
And can you make any comment? Have we had any cases as a result of people being on public transit here in Oakville?
In terms of COVID cases?
Yes.
No, I couldn't say. We've had no specific cases that have been identified as a result of a person on a transit bus.
So we just want to make sure that that message does go out to the residents, that it's actually a very safe way to travel. I've noticed some extra traffic on the roads, and given some of the construction happening on Trafalgar, which involves both Ward 5 and 6, going to Ward 7, we want to make sure that people do feel safe on those buses. So thank you for that. The next question is regarding Service Oakville. Have we been getting any additional or increased calls regarding the second wave? Questions or inquiries regarding what we're doing and what's happening?
Yes, we have gotten a steady increase on the Service Oakville calls. They've been dropping quite substantially over the summer. They continued to drop until the second wave. I would not say that though they have increased to the levels that they were much earlier in the spring. We have quite an active program on our social media to get information out as well as on the website. But Service Oakville is certainly one of those tools to get the message out. I wanted to go back to your question on the transit. I did want to indicate that in terms of the mask wearing on transits, it is an extremely high compliance ratio. So as you have said, it is very safe to travel on the buses, and people are abiding by the requirements. So it has been quite successful.
Great, thank you. And one last question about the contractors we use in our parks and open space. I mean, this is the time that we're doing tree planting and tree replacement, and obviously some of the areas that we've needed to do that. Have we had any issues with contractors not being able to provide personnel from their end of things in order to complete the work?
No, not that I'm aware of. I do want to acknowledge that the increase in sick time within staff has been increasing, and I'm sure the contractors have felt the same way, but it hasn't impacted the delivery on the contracts.
Okay, that's good to hear, because I mean, when we get calls during the summer, we always say, well, it's going to be done in the fall, and so I just wanted to make sure we're keeping an eye on that one. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Knoll.
Thank you. Two quick questions on the transit report. The service levels or the demand level at 30%, is that commensurate with what GO Transit or neighboring transit organizations are experiencing? Are we high, low, about the same?
No, it's very similar throughout all the transit, including
And-
Metrolinx,
I'm sorry.
including Metrolinx and the GO Transit
so-
system.
So the GO Transit's experiencing roughly the same percentage?
Yes.
Okay. In terms of ancillary revenue that we get from our transit advertising, are we experiencing a decrease in that revenue, whether through decreased demand on the part of advertisers or decreased rates as a part from the agency?
I don't believe we are, but I will check on that and let you know.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Well, how about a mover and a seconder to receive the report? Councillor Chisholm, Councillor Elger, thank you very much. Any objection? Madam Clerk, there is no objection and the motion carries. Council, item number 6 is the Economic Recovery Initiatives Report from the Economic Development Strategic Initiatives Department, and that is from Rebecca and Dorothy. Do you have questions for that? Do you have a mover and seconder to receive it? Councillor Knoll moves, Councillor Longo seconds. Thank you. Any objection? Madam Clerk, there's no objection, and that's received. Item number 7 is the Delegated Authority report from Director Stephen, and this is that the staff be authorized to submit traffic bylaws for established areas directly to Council for approval without covering reports with respect to the following matters: warranted and/or previously approved traffic regulations, changes to traffic regulations where the public is in consensus with the proposed changes. This sounds like the answer to the prayer of many a councillor, so let me see if there's a mover for that. Councillor Duddick moves, Councillor Grant seconds. Let's see if there's an objection. I didn't think there would be. Council has approved this, Madam Clerk. The next item is a notice of motion concerning site plan for 3194 Shoreline Drive. This is moved by Councillor Robertson and seconded by Councillor O'Meara and was introduced on September 21st for action at this meeting. The motion reads, whereas site plan control bylaw provides that at the request of Council, the Director of Planning shall present site plans to Council at any time prior to final approval, whereas the construction of a new home is proposed at 3194 Shoreline, which the neighbors believe is too large for the lot concerned and raises concerns that the variance is requested with the combination of lot coverage and GFA will set a precedent for not only their area, but all of Oakville. Whereas not only are variances required by way of appeal to LPAT, but being on the lake, site plan approval is necessary too. Whereas site plan approval application has been filed and is being considered, and whereas the neighbors desire a public review by Council of a site plan application at which they can delegate to express their concerns and suggestions, therefore be it resolved, the Director of Planning Services is requested to refer the site plan application to Council for consideration before any final approval is given. Councillor Robertson and Councillor O'Meara, do you wish to speak to this? I'll take that for maybe not.
No, it's pretty self-explanatory. The residents wish to discuss the site plan of that, and this is the process we have here to bring their request forward on their behalf.
Okay, I'm just hoping that they understand that variances aren't part of site plan, and if, as the resolution says, their concern is about variances, which would have been given at the Committee of Adjustment rather than at Council or at site plan, nor can those variances be changed at Council. So happy to have the ventilation, just hope that the public understands that the process is being wiggled a little bit in order to afford them a platform to speak about it. Is that your understanding?
That is our understanding at this point.
Okay, thanks very much. Is there any objection to the motion? Madam Clerk, there's no objection. The motion carries. Congratulations, councillors. Council, if I've read this right, we have a request for report moved by Councillor Longo and seconded by a councillor yet to be identified that staff provide a report to council on the disease apple scab impacting a high number of town crabapple trees on residential streets throughout the community. The report to include issues associated with the disease, contribution to the town's tree canopy, magnitude of the problem, and options and costs for treatment or mitigation. It sounds like your ward mate might be willing to second. Councillor Elgar, are you seconding?
Yes, yes, I am.
Thank you.
Please to second it for the councillor.
All right, council, is there any objection to the request for report? Madam Clerk, there's no objection. The report request is approved. We also have a request for report from Councillor Dudek and Councillor Chisholm that staff report back to council on the options available to introduce a bylaw similar to those in neighboring municipalities to address concerns raised regarding video surveillance. Is there an objection to this report request? Congratulations, councillors, your request is approved as well. That completes all the public matters and leaves us with our 3 confidential items. And the resolution to resolve into a closed session for these will read, bear with me, there's 3. That council resolve into a closed meeting session for the purpose of dealing with a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land relating to item C2, and for the purpose of dealing with personal matters about an identifiable individual relating to item C3, and for the purpose of dealing with personal matters about an identifiable individual relating to item C3, which is what it is. Councillor Elgar, are you moving that?
Mayor Burton, I will move that, but prior to going into camera, I just wonder if we can get confirmation that we can actually vote coming after we come out of camera on the recommendation that is made, especially with item C3.
Councillor, I will make a way for that to happen.
I thank you.
You're welcome. So Councillor Elgar has moved the motion to go into confidential session. I need a seconder. Councillor Longo, thank you. Is there any objection? Madam Clerk, there's no objection. Council has voted to resolve into a closed session for those purposes just named. Council, do you want a 2-minute break while we make sure we've transitioned? I'll give you a 5-minute recess. All right, council has resumed its public session, having met in a session closed to the public for the purpose of dealing with confidential items involving proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land and personal matters about identifiable individuals in accordance with the Municipal Act and the procedural bylaw of the town. And it's now in order for a mover and seconder for the following public motion that the confidential recommendation contained in the confidential report from the Legal Department and the Facilities and Construction Management Department dated October 7th, 2020, as revised, be approved. Councillor Elgar, you might be interested in moving that. Councillor Knoll seconds it. Is there any objection? Madam Clerk, there's no objection. The motion carries. Councillor Elgar, congratulations. Is there any other new business of a congratulatory or condolence nature? Councillor Dudek and Councillor O'Meara.
Thank you, Your Worship. October seems to be the month of birthdays, so I wanted to take this opportunity to wish a very happy birthday to my colleague, Councillor Robertson. It's her birthday today. Happy birthday. And I understand that Councillor O'Meara's wife hit a milestone, and Councillor Elgar also had a milestone birthday. So congratulations to all of them.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dudek. And now, could we have a mover and seconder for consideration of reading of the bylaws as listed in the agenda? Councillor Sanju and Councillor Longo, thank you. Is there any objection to the bylaws as listed? Madam Clerk, there's no objection. The bylaws are approved. Thank you very much for your time and attention. That completes our work here tonight. It's been terrific working with you, and we are adjourned.